Hello everyone, and welcome to Turkish Spotlight Secrets. Today's video follows a story that grew quietly behind the scenes, far from premieres, billboards, and red carpets, and only now steps into the light. Our focus is on two names whose paths helped define a generation of viewers, Elçin Sangu and Baris Arduç. What brings them back into the conversation isn't nostalgia for Karalık Aşk, nor a recycled rumor. It's a professional turn that has been simmering for years, Elçin's move toward directing, and Baris' steady decision to stand behind that choice in a way that is practical, unshowy, and unmistakably loyal. Let's start with the long view. After Karalık Aşk, both actors built careers that proved they were more than a single pairing. They took on roles that stretched their range and won audiences in Turkey and beyond. Yet fans always sensed that their creative rapport, timing, tone, and that easy give and take, had more chapters left. Few suspected the next chapter wouldn't be a reunion in front of the camera, but a recalibration of roles behind it. People close to Elçin describe a habit that never made headlines. Between call times and rehearsals, she collected ideas the way directors collect lenses, notes on light and stillness, sketches of blocking, questions about how a scene might breathe if the camera paused a half-second longer. She saved fragments of dialogue and kept a running list of mood references. None of this was a secret, it just wasn't a performance. It was preparation. The moment to act arrived the way these moments usually do, quietly at first, then all at once. A producer responded to a treatment. A slot opened on a development slate. A grant deadline appeared and forced decisions. That's where Baris entered the frame, not as a co-star, but as a collaborator who understood that the earliest drafts of a dream are fragile. He did the work few people see. Reading pages when schedules made it inconvenient, asking precise questions, and flagging places where the emotional spine of the story could be more visible. He introduced contacts who would actually read, not just take a meeting. He resisted the temptation to turn any of it into a spectacle. Here's what that support looked like in practice. First came a table session at a borrowed studio, a long afternoon with coffee going cold, lines that shifted with every pass, and a wall of index cards that refused to settle down. Pace was the enemy. Silence became the key. Elçin pushed scenes toward authenticity, cutting cleverness in favor of truth. Baris pointed out where a beat needed to land, then stepped back. By evening, the script felt less decorative and more lived in. No grand declarations. Just steady craft. Insiders say the project isn't designed as a calling card but as a statement of intent. It privileges behavior over monologues, atmosphere over exposition. The camera won't rescue weak moments with acrobatics, it will invite the actors to deliver what the frame can't fake: attention, restraint, listening. That is where Elçin's years in front of the lens become a director's advantage. She knows the difference between a look that reads and a look that begs for meaning. She knows when to hold and when to cut, because she has stood on the side of the line where those decisions are felt first. Now to the question that lights up comment sections: will Baris appear on screen? No confirmations, no denials, just a smile and a subject change. The possibility of a cameo is both irresistible and complicated. On one hand, it would thrill fans and reward the shared history that made the pair iconic. On the other, Elçin's debut has to stand on its own feet. The latest thinking, according to people who've read the pages, is that if he appears, it will be in a way that serves the story rather than the headline: a precise scene, a necessary presence, then a graceful exit. If he doesn't, that absence will be intentional too, another way of underlining that this is her canvas. Industry reaction has been cautious in the best sense: curious, respectful, engaged. Veteran producers see a debut poised to value the grammar of cinema, how sound falls away when a choice becomes inevitable, how a door closing can say more than a paragraph, how a minor character, framed correctly, can turn a plot. Editors who've watched her performances argue that her instincts for rhythm, when to give the audience air, when to tighten, will translate into a director's cut that trusts viewers to feel without being told. That's not an easy line to walk in a market that often rewards speed over depth, but it's exactly why some think the film could travel. Of course, outside the rooms where work happens, there is a public narrative to manage. Fans hold their breath for updates, montage their favorite scenes from Kerala Ask, and imagine how that old spark might reappear in a new context. The pair's response has been consistent: defer to the work. Don't perform the process. Let the project earn its air. That stance is not aloofness, it is protection of the film, of the people making it, and of an audience that deserves a finished piece rather than a livestream draft. So what is the story Elçin wants to tell? Not the plot, that's locked up, but the kind of story. Think cities that play characters without raising their voice. Think rooms that hold a history you don't need explained. Think dialogue trimmed to the bone so that what remains is the charge between words. Her notes, we're told, are full of verbs: slow, notice, withhold, risk. That vocabulary suggests a debut with fewer fireworks and more signal. This is where Baris's role behind the scenes says something larger about how careers age well in public. He doesn't stand aside, he stands near. He leverages his name when access stalls. He reads with a pen and resists giving line readings. He uses charisma as currency to buy the project time. That kind of advocacy is rarely visible because it isn't meant to be. It's not a cameo in the marketing. It's ballast. Will the film be perfect? No first film is. Will it announce a voice? That is the bet. And if the bet pays off, the question immediately becomes what comes next. A second feature that pushes further into her sensibility? A limited series that gives characters room to metabolize? Collaboration with international actors drawn to her emphasis on interiority? None of those paths are mutually exclusive. The point is that a path exists at all, and it exists because someone dared to move from wishing to doing. There's a lesson for anyone who has followed this pair since their breakout. The chemistry that once made their scenes feel effortless didn't disappear when their careers diverged, it matured. It turned into trust, which is chemistry's older, steadier sibling. Trust is what lets an actor hand a scene to a director and know it will be cared for. Trust is what lets a director ask for one more take when the room is tired. Trust is the currency here, and it has been earned the slow way. As the project advances, don't expect a parade of content. Expect a few careful updates, a still that reveals a tone without surrendering a plot point, a sound bite about process rather than hype, perhaps a small note on post-production that signals progress without inviting noise. If a festival slot appears, it will be because the film drew it, not because a fanbase demanded it. If the release goes wide, it will be because it resonated beyond the bubble that already loves these names. For viewers who grew up alongside their story, this pivot is oddly personal. It says that reinvention is allowed. It argues that the public doesn't have to choose between the comfort of the familiar and the thrill of the new. You can keep the spine, the values, the discipline, the care, and change the skin. You can move from the center of the frame to the other side of the monitor and still be exactly who you are, only more so. Before we close, a word about the work none of us will ever see. Drafts that failed and therefore taught. Meetings that went nowhere but clarified what to pursue next. Notes that stung and then healed into better choices. A post-it that simply read "earn it." Those artifacts won't trend, and yet they build the only thing that lasts, a practice. If Elçin's debut lands, it will be because a practice took shape. If it misses, the practice will catch her and raise the floor for the next attempt. Either outcome is growth. Either outcome is art. So here's where we are: Elçin Sangu steps into directing with intent, not accident. Baris Arduç uses his reach to widen the path, then steps aside so the work can lead. The mythology that once attached itself to their pairing doesn't have to be repeated, it can be repurposed. Yesterday it fueled romance on screen. Today it fuels risk off screen. That feels like progress. If you've enjoyed this deep dive, make sure you're subscribed to Turkish Spotlight Secrets and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next update. If you value coverage that respects process, consider joining as a member. Your support lets us spend time where stories actually happen, at the draft table, not just the premiere line. And tell us in the comments, Should Baris make a blink can you'll miss it cameo, or should the film keep the audience discovering Elçin's voice without any familiar anchors? We'll read every perspective carefully. Whatever answer the production team chooses, one thing is clear. This chapter isn't about fame recycling itself. It's about an artist rearranging her tools and a colleague lending his. If it works, the win won't belong to a headline. It will belong to a film that earned your attention by trusting your intelligence. That's a future worth backing. Thank you for watching. We'll see you soon with more stories told at the speed of craft rather than the speed of rumor. Until then, take care.